Hello, Callum. How are you?
Good evening. How are things?
Very well, very well. For those of you that are joining us, you have joined, hopefully, the correct webinar, which is Physical Activity, How to Become an Active Practice. That's hopefully the question I'm going to ask today, and a few things around that topic. Callum, I just wanted to find out from you, when did your practice become an active practice? Can you remember?
Yeah, it was when I was a GP trainee. I think it was 2022, but Camilla, who is on mute, can maybe check the stats. I'm going to say October 2022, but I might be wrong.
October 22. Okay, well, fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. See, I can't quite remember. I think ours was definitely before COVID. I was trying to remember exactly how long before COVID. I'm going to probably say 2019, maybe a little bit before that. But what's been, if you could summarize kind of the process and like the experience that it's been, if you summarize it into a few words, what would you say becoming an active practice kind of meant either for you individually or as for the team, the practice?
Yeah, I think a lot of these things are driven by an individual in the practice, whether that was me or a colleague or whoever it might be, and I think it offers validation for your enthusiasm, and it offers a kind of a thing, a idea for kind of cohesion of the staff and pulling everyone together behind that. So yeah, it was a vehicle for me to channel my enthusiasm and to pull people with me. So yeah, I
Yeah.
hope that answers the question.
No, no, brilliant. I never thought we would use the word vesicle in one of our webinars, and I'm glad that we have
it's,
managed to get it
it's
in there.
recorded as well. Yeah.
And you know, and I think I probably align quite closely with that because you're right. Because I think for a long time I felt a bit like an oddball because I was very passionate about this thing that no one particularly was that interested in to start with, and the Active Practice Charter gave it that kind of that structure that I could get more of the team involved, in particular the practice manager and the partners, to be engaged in something that I cared quite a lot about. But let's do a bit of housekeeping before we get into the meat and bones of this. We're going to go through a presentation, and please, if you have any questions, any comments, ideas of your own, don't hesitate to pop it in the Q&A. So the chat function is blocked, but you will see some useful links coming in the chat function. But the Q&A is open, so please do pop that in there, and we will make sure that we get through as many of them as we can. Callum will be asking as many of those questions to myself and vice versa. Now, this is recorded, so if you can't watch all of it for one reason or another, or you want to let a staff member at your practice or a colleague know about it, you'll be able to access it through the Royal College of GP's YouTube channel at a later date once we've completed editing it. And afterwards, there'll be a post-webinar evaluation, which we'd really appreciate you completing so that we can make sure that we continue to improve and evolve these webinars to give you the best outcome. So a little bit about myself. I'm GP based in the West Midlands. I've been a physical activity and lifestyle champion at the college for the last 4 and a bit years. So yeah, since 2020. And I have a number of other roles with organizations like Park Run, Swim England, with Red Whale, as well as a few consultancy roles. And I love movement. I've come from a background of previously hating physical activity through sort of school and university, and a number of health kind of concerns brought me to try to reevaluate what I thought about movement and use that to improve my health. And it's brought me to kind of where I am today. What about you, Callum? Tell us a bit about yourself for those that haven't met you
Thanks.
before.
I'm a GP up in Aberfeldy and Kinloch which is kind of the southern edge of the Scottish Highlands, and I'm also a kind of researcher, so an academic into physical activity promotion at Dundee Uni, and with Hussein work here at the RCGP, and I've kind of previously worked at the WHO in Copenhagen, looking at similar things around physical activity promotion in primary care settings. So, but yeah, the primary care is or the physical activity interest comes from a kind of a lifetime of movement and sport. So yeah, I'm a pathological enthusiast and champion movement as a consequence of my own love for it.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant, awesome. So, Callum, do you want to do this disclaimer? You're very good at it.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of half there. I look, I'm a hands down pathological enthusiast. I'm an early career GP and an early career researcher, uh, and we want all these sessions to be as engaging and interactive as possible. We accept and we kind of want to say from the very forefront we don't have all the answers, and we can probably learn as much from you guys as you can from us. So please use the Q&A function, feedback, and yeah, let us know what you're doing. Give us some
Yeah.
feedback, and
Yeah,
hope.
share ideas. Yeah, no, I'd like to hear them. I'd like to learn from them, maybe even steal them. So one of our objectives today, we're going to be going through what the Active Practice Charter is, its core elements, and look at the new toolkit that we have created to help facilitate becoming an active practice, as well as to provide you with lots of useful resources that you can use as part of the application and to promote physical activity to your patients and to your staff. So first and foremost, I think what's really important to say is, like, knowledge is really important, and it will help you in the discussions that you have with patients, with the interactions you have with your colleagues, and being knowledgeable about physical activity is crucial. However, I think what's really impactful is that when we are able to find movement in our own lives, no matter how short or whatever type it may be, you're always going to be when you're trying to encourage others. And I think it's like anything, we don't want to ever sort of ask someone to do something that we're not prepared or able to do. And Callum, what are your thoughts around this in terms of, us considering our own activity levels as a key element of making sure that we're able to communicate it well?
I love the context of this. You say you've got your bike over your left shoulder, just it's virtue signaling to the rest of us.
I don't want anyone to steal it. You see, I'm away from home, and I'm too paranoid that someone's going to nick it. But yeah, it's also a
I
subtle
mean,
message.
I think from the limited research I've done, but being immersed in it for the last few years, one of the biggest facilitators of healthcare professionals delivering physical activity promotion is their own level of physical activity. On the flip of that, there's a world of research on smoking cessation, and doctors that smoked were much less likely to deliver a smoking cessation, and it really talked to that power of advocacy.
Yeah, spot on. And well, we've been talking about movement for a lot. I think we should maybe try and do some movement, if that's all right. So 30 seconds. I think it's important that we do this because otherwise we're going to be sitting down for a long period of time. So let's get the timer on. Oh, the timer's already on. I forgot that one. So you've lucked out and you've only got 15 seconds. There we go. Boy. Last few. Oh, there we go. There we go. There we go. Not too bad. Not too bad. Oh, you see, Callum, I'm not sure about you, but I've never actually seen him stop. Like, he's got incredible endurance.
This guy,
Yeah, he never
amazing, isn't it?
stops. He never stops. Shall we just wait now? We won't wait and see. I think he'll probably keep going. So, the Active Practice Charter. What is it? Quite simply, it is made up of 5 criteria. Now, in the corner of the slide, you see there's a QR code. That will take you to the web page where we have detailed information outlining some examples of these 5 criteria, what they mean. But let's break it down. Now, I tend to group them into 3. So one is around sedentary behavior. The other is physical activity. And the last one is forming partnerships with physical activity providers. Now, if we start with sedentary behavior, Callum, a lot of people here, I get emails and they're a little confused as they say, well, surely if we're increasing, physical activity, we get people active, surely then that's the same thing I can just say for sedentary behavior. What are your thoughts on that? Are they distinct things, or have we got this wrong? Have we got too many criteria unnecessarily?
Yeah, I think we probably started talking about sedentary behavior as an independent risk factor a few years ago. It's becoming more and more common, but the kind of evidence shows that increased sedentary behavior is an independent risk factor. regardless of your physical activity levels. And so that's why we talk about it. It's important, particularly in the jobs that we do. It's very easy in our jobs to spend all day sitting, and probably the norm, to be honest. And so so yeah,
Exactly.
we advocate for breaking those sitting periods.
Yes, yes. And I think the reason that we did this, and I was speaking to Andrew Boyd, who was one of the original champions and devised the 5 criteria. As Callum just very rightly said, it is a distinct thing. You can be, and I love this term, the active couch potato. Let's say you're doing a 10K run most mornings, for example. But then if you then spend the next 11 and a half hours of your day, either at work, at home, etc., a combination of both, sitting down, then, as Callum rightly said, there are independent risks associated with that. A really useful piece of research to look up is work done by Richard Main, who's a Northern Ireland based GP, and he looked at sedentary time specifically in primary care staff. And what they used was the gold standard for assessing sedentary time, which is the accelerometer strap placed on the thigh. And Callum, can you guess how many hours the average GP spent sedentary per day?
Assuming not including sleeping time, but I'm going to say
Don't
at
include sleeping
waking
time.
time, 10 hours.
11 and a half.
Wow.
11 and a half. That surprised me. That surprised me. And so, I asked him recently, because I was on a podcast with him recently, and I said, from the research, what is the kind of optimal time that we need to kind of keep it under, right? Like, what do we want to avoid it going over? And he said 8 hours. So there's a significant chunk gap in between kind of what's ideal and what the average GP is doing. And so thinking about how we can break up that sedentary time is really important, because yes, we could add in physical activity here and there, and that is of course going to help. And during that time slot, let's say the 30 minutes you're being active, whatever it may be, you've reduced that time of sedentary activity, yes, but you need to consider how can you even break up the sedentary time without it having to be formal exercise or physical activity. And do you do anything particularly in your work or at your surgery to try to combat sedentary time?
I was gonna ask you the same question. I'll go first, then you can fire back. So I actually by default, as opposed to design, I'm the very last door in the corridor. So it's about 50 meters to the waiting room. It's a long corridor, but so I get my steps in with that. I've also got a standing desk at
Oh,
work,
nice.
which actually I use, but I find it an amazing conversation prompt with patients, because I just leave it up. I sit down with them and then
Yeah.
ask for permission to stand up,
Yeah.
and it's an amazing conversation prompt. So they're probably the main two things. We try and walk at lunchtime, slightly weather dependent. But yeah, how about you,
It's
Hussein?
always sunny in Scotland. What are you talking about, Callum? Yeah, so what do I do? So I have my buzzer sort of connect to when the patients sign in to tell them that I'm in the ground floor, because we have 2 waiting rooms on the ground floor and the first floor, even though I am in fact on the first floor. And then what happens is then I then have the opportunity to go down the stairs, collect them from the downstairs, and then come up with them. One, it gets me up and down the stairs. So, yes, breaks the sedentary time. I don't use the automated cold buzzer. And two, it actually gives me the opportunity to assess the patient's function. So, I actually just have a glance at my watch and I'll note how long it takes them to go from the seated position up the stairs and into my room. And I just leave a little number on my consultation notes. A lot of people don't get what it is, but it'll say like 49S, and it just means to say 49 seconds to do it. Because then I find, let's say, Callum, you came to see me 6 months ago, and then 6 months later you come in saying that you're feeling quite unwell. Like, I use the time, because I may be like, oh, actually, yeah, it took him a minute and a half to get up those stairs and into that room. So I've got another objective assessment plus breaking a bit of sedentary time. But it's little things like that, trying to replace it. The other thing is commuting. So try to, where feasible and safe and appropriate, I love to get on the bike and cycle into the practice rather than get on the car, because that's some seated time that isn't necessary. But anyway, we diverge. So the sedentary behavior, think about how you, so that's some examples for staff. We also want to think about how we can do that for patients. So one of the examples that we did at my practice is we had some cycle rails installed So we've got 4 rails put in there so patients can come in by bicycle. And what was interesting to see was for the first 4 or 5 months, no one really used those cycle rails apart from myself and a couple of other colleagues that also cycled in. But then after a bit of time, I started noticing that I was struggling to get my bicycle locked up. So patients were starting to use it. And my favorite one was a patient of mine who's 96 and he cycled into the surgery and I absolutely loved it. And he also commented on the poor condition of my bike and its chain, and I hadn't looked after it properly, according to him. He was probably right. So yeah, consider. Have you thought about how you may want to, or have managed to sort of improve the sedentary behaviour for patients?
Yeah, who's saying one thing? I'm going to add a bit of realism, which I should probably add, which is although I'm the last room in the corridor, quite often room 2 is empty, and if it's taken too long, I just dive in there. So
Yeah.
we only have 12 minutes. So yeah, I think there's a realistic element as well, isn't there? In terms of patient-centered behavior, yeah, I think we could do better. We have bike racks.
Yep.
We have standing waiting area, or we would encourage people in. We've got our kind of health promotion room. But yeah, definitely something we could do better. And to be honest, if I'm level with you, I think that's the one of the hardest of the 5 criteria, if not, well, probably the
Yeah.
hardest of the 5 criteria.
For sure. I saw this adopt this, and I've recently stolen it, which is where they got on the "We Are Undefeatable" resources the 5 and 5 poster, which they then popped in the waiting room, and I had a little sign saying, while you wait for the next 5 minutes, why don't you try some of these exercises? So I thought that was quite nice, because otherwise you're sitting around getting annoyed why you can't, be seen quite yet. Do a bit of movement, hopefully they can enter your room slightly less annoyed. So yeah, I think that's another great way to just utilize that waiting room space. I know one practice, I can't remember the name of it, but I can see the image that they sent in. But they actually removed some of the seating in the waiting room to create like a stretching and a standing space. Can you remember the one that I'm talking about? I don't know if you saw the
Uh,
image,
I
but they had some
I
like
can.
resistance bands as well as just some mats for people
Right.
to sort of do some stretching and stuff, which I thought was really
I'd
quite
love to
nice.
get a static bike in the waiting room. I don't know if anyone would use it, but it would definitely attribute value.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. Okay. The other ones that we talked about is increasing physical activity in staff and patients. So how about if I go start off with some of the examples that I've seen from practices? One practice up near Newcastle, they actually got one of the patients who was a yoga instructor to deliver some yoga sessions with the staff just during lunchtime. It was only 15 minutes long, but the staff really, commented on it being really impactful for them and they really enjoyed it. And the patient actually did it for free, as a thank you to the practice. So often what I found is in the patient community, there can be some really great assets when it comes to supporting the practice be active and that kind of thing. What about yourself? Anything you've done
Yeah,
for the practice
we
staff?
a friend and colleague uses World Walking app, which is a free app with lots of long walks on it. So it has walk London to Paris, or
Mm,
circumnavigate the world, or there's a huge number of options, and
yeah.
actually you can add your own. And so we recently, inspired by Susie, in Aberfeldy, the next village along is called Dull, and
Oh,
it's paired with Boring in Oregon. That's so we did a walk from Dull to Boring,
no.
the long way around. So we went down through Europe, and so that was our kind of activity. And what was great
Amazing.
was Boring got wind of it and walked from Boring to Dull. the link the
That
link
was
is
the
pretty,
most interesting thing that has ever happened to both those
yeah,
places.
probably
That
true.
should have got on the news. See, why isn't this being covered by
It,
tabloid
it,
newspapers?
it was in a Scottish newspaper. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
of course it was.
yeah.
Of course it was. Okay,
uh,
brilliant, brilliant. Something for increasing physical activity in patients. Like, there's lots of different ways you can do that. And actually, my favorite method was one that was deployed by, it was a practice in London. I think it was South London, somewhere near Streatham. And they got their patients to attend a kind of a local community group where they then did movement sort of based at that community center. So they had some taekwondo being delivered by a local group. They had some like salsa dancing also being done, and it was sort of patients doing it for patients, which was great. And then they started running this thing as like a bi-month, so every 2 months. I don't know if bi-monthly is the right term, but every 2 months they would run this session and get the kind of community center to start utilizing physical activity, which I thought was great because it meant that like the staff didn't have to put on anything, because at the end of the day we're super busy, and there are serious time and cost constraints to this, but it's just trying to marry up the sort of the practice community and the fact that they can send out messages to patients to let them know about these kind of events, and already existing groups that are looking to put on movement for the community. So yeah, it was really nice to see that they were essentially ticking that fourth and fifth because they were partnering with a local physical activity provider in one go. And I think that's another thing, Callum, is that often some of your initiatives will cover multiple areas. So you don't have to do a separate one for each if a particular project you've done ticks a few boxes.
You're saying Helen has asked a great question, which I think you're going to offer some good insights into. But do you have a disclaimer by the exercise equipment in the waiting room in case patient injures themselves? I'm going to add a question to that, which is, do you know of any indemnity cover which we could buy as a practice to cover ourselves in the event that we put exercise equipment in? Over to you.
Really, this is a really good question. Now, at my practice, we don't have exercise equipment in the waste room, but other practices have. And I have explored this and looked into what would be required. Now, for the equipment that you have, if it's going to be used for non-private use, which is what this would be in this case, then you do need to have some signs, which has a standard health waiver, of which there are many that you can find templates online. And UK Active on their website have some useful information to sort of outline exactly kind of what those waivers mean and do. So yes, I would definitely get a waiver printed out. In terms of liability, then if you are going to have equipment, it's more than likely that you will need some form of liability cover for those pieces of equipment. And there is plenty of physical activity liability insurance out there. When I asked one of the practices that was delivering it, in terms of the cost, they said it was less than £80 a year. So like it was pretty small when it comes to the cost. Obviously, that's going to depend on how many pieces of equipment you've got out there and sort of what you're doing. I know that there was one practice that actually was co-located, and so what they did to get around it is that where they were co-located, there was a physical activity studio, and they lent some of the equipment to the venue, which was just across kind of the hallway, and then they covered the sort of insurance because it went under that. But in all, if you're going to have exercise equipment in the waiting room, and it's more than just a space for people to stretch and to to stand and that kind of thing, then yeah, I'll definitely get liability and a clear waiver for people to be aware of using it safely.
Thank you.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Any other questions to mop up before we
No.
push through? Excellent.
Oh no,
Excellent.
there's one. Here we are from Leanne, who's a social prescriber and wants to set up an active practice. She's particularly interested in starting a walking group from the practice. Are there any potential barriers I should be aware of, such as health and safety considerations?
Really good. Now you've come to the right place. Is it Leanne that you said
Yeah.
put the question? Yeah. Oh, you've come to the right place. Like, if there's one thing me and Callum know, it's how to put on a walk and a jog for people. Now we're going to come onto that slide, so I promise we're going to go into that in detail in a second, okay? But the answer is that it's actually a lot easier than you think, and so just hold on to that just 1 second. Now the final point on this slide is around partnering with a local physical activity provider. The majority of applicants that we get utilize the Park Run Practice initiative, which of course is a brilliant way of doing that. Okay, so we have now over 2,000 practices that are signed up to the Park Run Practice initiative, but it doesn't have to be Park Run. It can be any individual organization. It's a provider that's providing physical activity for your community, and you are looking at how can you support that, whether it be support in terms of signposting patients to the events, whether it be co-locating an event. For example, we did a summer kind of a health check that we did in the local park in Leamington, and we got down our local sort of dance yoga group that they do, where they sort of do yoga flow, I think it was the term, where sort of movement of yoga through music. So yeah, that's like an example. But there's so many others. I know one practice that actually got one of the patients who was a personal trainer to do some seated exercises to pop on their website. There's other practices that use already existing, like Love to Move from British Gymnastics, and they pop those videos on the website. And yeah, fine, that's great. That's partnering with that and using the digital assets. What about you, Callum? How do you sort of partner with local physical activity providers?
Yeah, I think it's about 72% of active practice charters are park run practices. So we are a park run practice. We interestingly, one of the challenges we had was that we didn't have a park run that was that nearby. It was about 40 minutes away, but the town has just started one. So we're week 4, week 5 now
Oh,
of
really?
Aberfeldy having their own park run. So
That's so
for
cool.
people that ticks off their UK park runs, then come up and give me a shout when you're here. But yeah, so park run, we or I was put onto this by you, Hussein, which is and there's a reasonable number. I think there's 7 or 8 GP practices that now run a run talk run. So
Yeah.
run talk run is and walk talk walk is the same organization in effect, but they are primarily a mental health support group that recognise the power of social company and physical activity together. And so yeah, we meet outside the practice on a Monday night. We numbers ebb and flow. To be honest, we're not a big practice. We've got a list size of just over 5,000. So we sometimes get 2, we sometimes get 10. You know, it totally varies. But we go for we have 2 groups now, so we go for a walk or a run. And through the charity Run Talk Run, which is part of a wider group called Sport in Mind, they have an app which is a disclaimer, and so all participants sign a disclaimer in advance, which covers me. It takes responsibility themselves, and the charity offer third-party indemnity. And so yeah, that was a really nice way of and Leanne, I don't know how you're looking at doing it, but that was a really low hanging fruit. It was super easy to set up, and inspired by Hussein, that's why I did it. So I was looking for options, and yeah, that's why I chose Run Talk Run, was for the support, the indemnity, and the disclaimers, and amongst other things. So
Brilliant.
yeah,
Yeah, that's literally what I was going to be saying in about 10 minutes time. So we've ticked that box. So Leanne, when we're mentioning kind of how you can achieve that, like when you partner with a provider like Sport in Mind, who will support you to deliver run talk runs or walk talk walks, whatever you may do, then they provide the insurance, they support you when you're completing the risk assessment, they'll provide a template for that, and the costs they cover, which is very grateful for them. What you provide is being that leader, either the walk leader or the run leader. And I'd highly recommend for people going into this, don't do it on your own, okay? Because if you're then having to go week after week and it then becomes quite a responsibility for yourself, try and form a bit of a team of 2 or 3 of you, and then you can alternate, and that allows you to have more flexibility, okay? Because we have to bear in mind our own mental health and our own workload. We're not exactly twiddling our thumbs. So yes, form a little bit of a team, but they sort that out. And if you want to start this, if you go to the Run Talk Run website, just Google Run Talk Run. On there, you'll see Become a Leader at the top of the tab. Click on that, put in your details, and then the charity will contact you and support you to start your walk or jog or both, if you like. And Callum, even though you're getting, let's say, small numbers, because you are a very small practice, if we're being honest, like that's still really meaningful. And I know for those of them that attend and go on those walks and runs, I'm sure they really enjoy it. Now, we base ours out of the primary care network. In fact, 2 primary care networks that are like closely aligned, Leamington North and Leamington South. And so we have 85,000 patients. And so we see much bigger groups. So we're somewhere between normally 25 to 50. And it's grown so well. If you look at it over the last 4 or 5 years, like the relationships and the people that have come, there's so many great stories there. And I can't tell you how rewarding it is as a clinician to be able to do that and to share that with the patients. In fact, that picture that you see here is one of the groups. We have 4 groups that run every evening based on their pace. So this is the running group. We also have a power walking group and a couch to 5K group and a gentle walking group. And yeah, just, you know, such great memories, and rain or shine, we are out having some fun.
Hussein, I'm just going to pull in. Kasim's put a really great comment. He's a first contact physio, and he's been working closely with the health wellbeing team and social prescribers in their PCN to set up chair-based classes, along with local charities. So kind of partnering with local charities to deliver, and saying it works really well. And maybe that would be a piece of advice: is find out what's going on, because maybe these things are happening, and you can just you can kind of you can utilize community assets that already exist and go along signpost CO2, and maybe you don't need to take on the risk or be the person that leads it, because it's already happening. Just yeah.
Definitely don't
Thanks,
reinvent the wheel.
Kasim.
Yeah, if it's all there. Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate that input, and it's a perfect example. Like, even if you look at that picture at the bottom, the gentleman on the far right there is Mick Hurrell, and he's one of our patients, but is a personal trainer for the over 55s, and he helps lead a number of the sessions. So I don't feel like this is going to have to be a staff only endeavor. In fact, like, it's far better if you can get your patients driving this for your patients. Like, our PPG is fantastic in supporting a number of the walks. There are a number of the walk leaders. Try to utilize that resource. It'll be a benefit for them as well as for yourselves to make sure you manage the sort of time commitments of that. Now, what could it bring to the practice? Like, what benefits? Now, I know that there's obvious ones in terms of, undertaking a project like this. There's a lot of potential rewards that you get from seeing it in action. You can see that it can support bringing the practice staff together. If, for example, you combine it with socials. So one summer social we did frisbee golf. Have you ever played frisbee golf, Callum?
I was useless.
Oh, you'd have been great then at our summer social. But like, we had a little switch in terms of, let's not just go down to the nearby pub, which is literally just down the road. Like, let's not just do that. Let's just bring in a bit of movement and have a bit of fun. And we're all pretty useless, if being honest. It's quite hard. I don't know if any of you watching is any good at frisbee golf. It's pretty impossible, but it was just good fun. And when I would say is, I would try to avoid doing classical exercise as a staff event. The reason being is that not everyone is going to feel comfortable and willing to do exercise, especially, let's say, in front of the colleagues and work friends. So whenever we do this, we try to make it into a more game kind of thing, rather than, let's go on a staff jog, or, let's do a staff cycle, or, that kind of thing. So we try to just use, movement in a more fun way, and then people hopefully don't feel as sort of nervous around that. What about you, Callum? What benefits have you noticed for your practice?
Yeah, we've done a few things. One of the things we did was a kind of a walking challenge. It was walking and cycling challenge, and people self-tracked. And one thing that was amazing was that the competitive streak definitely came out in a lot of people, and it was the focus of a lot of conversations. We had a lot of fun. I think the flip of that is not everyone's competitive. And so I think a real spectrum of activities is required. In our town, last couple of years we've had a Kaylee, a kind of an annual Kaylee.
Wow.
And I've been trying to get staff members along, and I've struggled. Getting patients along is okay, actually.
Yeah.
But maybe so we've had kind of over 100 at both of them, which has been great.
Brilliant.
But yeah, sadly, getting a big staff buy-in at that was tricky. But I'm going to keep trying. So,
yeah,
but
and don't
staff
be
morale is a big
disheartened.
thing.
Yeah, and don't be disheartened, and don't feel, and please, of course, never pressure staff to attend these kind of events. I know you don't, but like, it's just like, sometimes you want to feel like it's only successful if all of the staff are sort of coming and getting involved. But even now, like 6 years kind of down the line of the stuff that I've been doing, like, I don't get all the staff coming. Some people don't want to come, and that's totally fine. They don't want to. I respect that. You mentioned that it's easier to get patients down. 100% easier sometimes to get patients down. All I would say is just, as I said before, try to make it just fun, engaging, as kind of as open and flexible in terms of different people's needs. So where possible, have activities that doesn't have any competition involved, that is very light in terms of intensity, that doesn't require any specialist equipment or clothing or that kind of thing. So just think outside the box. And the most important thing, actually, ask the staff. Ask them, what are they interested in? Is there something that they'd like to bring down? Is there a particular thing they want to try out? And see where that goes. But don't feel like you have to somehow behavior change the entire staff to become, active overnight.
I think one of the things I've noticed is trainees, medical students, nursing students. They bring so much enthusiasm, and they also bring time. They have to do projects, and one thing that I've noticed is that staff seem to respond well to. They'll often say yes to the trainees or to the medical students when they wouldn't say yes to. I'm like part of the furniture now. I've not been there that long. Like 4 or 5 years is long enough, and so yeah, they're so supportive as a collective. We're very supportive of our students and our trainees, and we're quite proud of that. And so they often offer an avenue in.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, that's the smoking gun that we've been looking for. And just for a benefit, just for the individual, let's say you're the champion that you want to, focus on, let's say, achieving active practice charter with your practice. Like from my career perspective, like that very much was the first stepping stone for me into lifestyle medicine. And it really helped me, learn the trade. It helped me just start to explore other avenues, and it built up my confidence that I could undertake a project like this and get early sort of small successes, which later led on to other things. So I can definitely say, just from the individual championing it, there are a number of benefits in terms of your CV, as well as like you can then plug it into your appraisals and your PDP. So I think a number of benefits there. Now, Alan, do you know how many active practices we have? I know. I don't know. Do you know?
Catch you out here. I do. I got an update
Oh,
earlier on. 512. Unbelievable. With
yes.
another 9.
Pending.
Hopefully very shortly. Yeah.
Yes. So this is the map of active practices. If you're watching this and you are in Northern Ireland, Wales, or Scotland, please apply, because there's not enough blue. There's not enough blue in those devolved nations. Now, I know the population density is very low. Like, no one lives in Scotland in reality once you go north of Edinburgh and Glasgow. But we want you. We want you. Callum, like, your practice based in Aberfeldy. Where is that in the map? Remind me. Like, is that
So
the one like to the left of Dundee?
we're underneath the A of Scotland, the one directly underneath the A.
Oh, got you there. You're right bang kind of in the middle, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
central.
slap bang in the middle. Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, you are
yeah,
right on the edge of the Highlands, as you can see there.
yeah,
Okay, got you. Now,
yeah.
what we've seen over the last 12 months is actually the fastest growth of the active practice charter. Like it's been fantastic to see. Like, we actually had a target for September to hit 500 practices, and we've already gone beyond that. Why do you think we're seeing a sort of acceleration in terms of applicants coming to the active practice charter? Because I thought it was going to be the other way around. I thought it was going to start slowing down once we got the initial, evangelicals.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's interesting. I think there's probably a number of things. I think that there's an acknowledgement that what we're doing isn't working, and we need to try something new. I think time is an obvious challenge there. I think that there's been a slight change in the political landscape, and more of a talk about preventative health. And I think the biggest thing here is an acknowledgement that the answers lie in primary care, but probably out with GPs. And it's great to see, in the questions that have been asked, there's been a variety of different kind of health and well-being professionals, and I think that's really important. I think we need to acknowledge the power that social prescribers, physios, practice nurses have in this, and empower them to lead the active practice charter.
Yeah,
Despite it
absolutely.
being an
Team
RCGP
effort.
initiative. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's team effort. Like, it's any member of staff can be the champion that leads the project. You know, literally any. They don't have to be clinical. So yeah, we
Why do
welcome
you
them
think
all.
he's saying?
What do I think? I think all those points are valid and likely contributing factors. I think maybe awareness is starting to come up. I think we've at least I think both of us have noticed we've been invited to speak at more events about the Active Practice Charter and about physical activity. And so hopefully we're seeing greater and greater awareness. Because I remember when Richard Main, you know, I mentioned before, he did that sedentary activity research. He also asked participants if they knew about the Active Practice Charter then. And I think it was only 2% back in like, that was early days. That was like, I think 2020, knew
Yeah.
about the Active Practice Charter then. And I hope that that figure's gone up. I don't have any stats to prove that, but it's nice to hopefully see that there's greater awareness. And so therefore people are getting on board and doing it. So let's have a look at some of the tools that we have created to hopefully improve your ability to sign up if you haven't signed up already. So first and foremost, like as Callum just rightly said, so I'm not going to linger too long on this slide. Like you're not alone. This is about trying to else in the team, who else in the community could support you to achieve active practice. And also active practice doesn't have to be big, grand projects. Okay. It can start with some really simple, small, but impactful things. Okay. So don't feel like you need to achieve some kind of, you know, overarching project that, you know, took months to do. Like sometimes the smallest things actually really matter. And in our physical activity hub, which you can find on the college website, if you just Google RCGP physical activity, you will go straight to that page. You'll see there are a number of tiles which have lots of useful resources. These include sort of posters and flyers, as well as some social media assets, imagery. We have text templates, which you can pop into your SMS provider, whether that be Accurix or someone else. We also have resources that we've linked to from other fantastic organizations like We Are Undefeatable, which is the Richmond group of charities, as well as Moving Medicine. This is information tailored for currently healthcare professionals to support them in having physical activity conversations with patients, in particular those with long-term health conditions. We've also got suggested coding practice, stuff that, for example, I utilize at the primary care network I work at to help track any kind of initiative or group that we start, as well as other staff benefits, either from the membership scheme at the Royal College or those that you may want to utilize within your practice like Cycle to Work scheme. And for those of you looking to connect with a local physical activity provider, we've got some information from CIMSPA, and CIMSPA are the organization who ensure that the training of fitness and physical activity professionals is up to standard. And they give some really useful information for you to understand who you can be confident in terms of them having the knowledge to support patients with long-term conditions. And they have a kite mark, like the CIMSPA logo, which often a provider will display clearly. Now, here's an example of some of those posters and flyers that you may want to get printed out or have digitally if you have digital screens in your waiting room. I really like the imagery. I think the college have done some great work making them look sort of attractive and enticing. You can download those off our website. And here are the sort of social media tiles that you can pop on Instagram, and you can use that, for example, and have some personalized local content in the actual caption, in the sort of the comments bit below your post to link patients up to some relevant things in your area. These are some of the text templates that we've got on there, and they're just guides. You know, you may want to use them word for word. You may want to adapt them for what you're doing. But I've definitely found that using text messaging for patients can be quite impactful, especially when you've got a time pressured consultation. You may not be able to really go into the nitty gritty of bits of information with patients, but you can sow the seeds and then let them know that you're going to send a follow-up text message with further information. Callum, do you use the sort of text much when you're trying to promote physical activity?
Yeah, sometimes probably underutilized to be honest. But yeah, from a lifestyle perspective, I sometimes find it helpful to send out kind of surveys or kind of questionnaires in advance of them coming in. So I might send them. The BSLM have got a lifestyle questionnaire, so sending things like that can be really valuable. It can kind of
Nice.
empower in advance and lead conversations.
Oh.
I've
And
got
how often do you find
yes.
that people complete that out of interest, the questionnaire? Like, is it a good hit rate?
Yeah, I think yeah, pretty good. To be honest, I use it for quite a few things. I find, for example, I'll send Epworth scores before consultations and ask people to complete it. And yeah, people are really good actually. Generally, I
Oh,
think
wicked.
it's tailored and yeah, it's great. And it's nice that we didn't use kind of multi-text language as well. There's no like BRB or like who's saying I've got a question for you here from an anonymous attendee.
Ooh.
If the desire is to engage and devolved nations, can resources which are less England centric be provided? Maybe I should
Oh,
take
yeah.
this one. What do you
Yeah,
think?
yeah, go for it, Callum. Go for it.
Luke, that's a great question and something I'm really passionate about. It's a slightly tricky situation because a lot of the funding comes from sporting. That's the bottom line. And so there's, I initially got involved, be like, come on, what about the Scottish representation here? I think there's a pragmatic element here. I've tried to have conversations, and things happen in Scotland. There are some great stuff happening here. If depending where you're from, reach out, or regardless of where you're from, reach out, and we can either point to some of those resources or put you in touch with someone that will know. So yeah, there actually was another question there that came up and it disappeared. So can we have the slides, handouts? Oh, that's sorted, perfect. So yeah,
Perfect.
anonymous
Perfect.
attendee. If you want to remain anonymous, no problem. But I would love to help you. So please email me, and if you're Scottish, I'll sort you out, and if you're not,
Yeah.
I'll find someone else that can help.
For sure, yeah, and any kind of anything that is happening in those devolved nations, yeah, please do share with us because we do try to put out as much information that we do, and of course, our knowledge of the physical activity landscape in all those nations will be based on our own experiences and what we can gather. We've got. As I've mentioned Richard Main a few times, I always use him as a bit of a sounding board to understand what's going on in Northern Ireland. We try to incorporate those, but any local knowledge that you have that you want to share with your fellow, Welsh or Scottish or Northern Ireland colleagues, please do send it in. We will 100% pop it in. One thing that I was speaking with the team is having in the newsletter some specific content for each of those devolved nations. That's something that I think we should think about going forwards. But we would love to get more information to populate that with. Right. So a few more text templates that you can utilize. This one is now focused on the parkrun practice, if you choose that as your method of partnering with a local physical activity provider. And we touched on the resources. We've already covered We Are Undefeatable. Couch to Fitness. Callum, have you ever used Couch to Fitness?
No,
No, oh, okay. Couch to
sorry.
Fitness, I would highly recommend. Okay, so this is a online program which is completely free, and that's not just for a period of time. It's free forever, and it is online workout videos which are tailored for different health conditions and also different stages of life. So they have a prenatal and a postnatal, for example. It's run by the Our Parks charity. So they previously did physical activity groups in parks, in particular in deprived areas. They still do that, but they launched with funding from Sport England, although it's accessible in all of the United Kingdom, a couch to fitness because not everyone wants to couch to 5K. Some people just want to get a bit active in other ways. And I would highly recommend these videos. And genuinely, as someone who's quite active myself, I do some of those videos because when I'm, let's say, stuck in a hotel room like I am today, they're actually really engaging. They're quite funny as well. The instructors that they have are really good, and I highly recommend them to patients. They have different levels of difficulty and challenge, so you can you can get something from it no matter who you are. And I very much recommend giving that a go. And it's free, but really high quality, if I'm being honest. Anything you want to share about moving medicine, sort of briefly here?
Yeah, look, I think the moving medicine resources, if you've not seen them, are amazing. They've got some. It's really user friendly. They've got quite well hidden at the moment are some patient information leaflets, which are disease specific and are amazing to print out. The website has been redesigned in the context of feedback to make it more navigatable. And so watch this space, but it's functioning at the moment. It's great. And the team at Faculty of Sport and Exercise Medicine have done a really amazing job.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, so we've touched We're Undefeatable, the Richmond Group of Charities. These are the health charities of the UK with a number of different resources. They have, in fact, a health professional promotional pack, which comes with pretty much everything you need. Now, that poster that I talked about with the sort of 5 in 5, the 5 movements in 5 minutes, as well as they've actually got an app which they've launched, which contains, again, more physical activity videos and information for patients, again, free. So I'd highly recommend sending over there. And we also display the campaign videos. So they have storytellers from different backgrounds, health condition statuses, which you can then show in your waiting room. And they're really quite impactful and they're very good. They've got a very strong positive theme through them, which is great. Callum's touched on moving medicine here. What I love most about moving medicine are the 1 and 5 minute consultations. Because although, if I'm being honest, I don't actually manage to get them quite into 1 or 5 minutes, I get them close to that. And it just gives me a bit of structure to use. And if you haven't looked at them, go on the Moving Medicine website, have a look at the 1 and 5 minute, or maybe some of their other content with it. Now, the population searches, this is something that, you know, I do quite a lot of because it really helps. It really helps us to identify the patients because when we set up a number of our groups, we found that the kind of patients that were coming were already ones that were quite activated and were already relatively active already, but they wanted to come for that community connection, which is brilliant. But we combined those text templates that we talked about with the population searches for a number of the long-term conditions to then send out messages to these patients to let them know about what was going on locally from a physical activity offering. And that's really helped to boost the numbers of participants that have come through the events. So, Callum, Parkrun Practice Initiative, anything you want to add to the audience here that you think would be important?
It's super easy. Do it. Communicate clearly with the park run, feedback, get their support, and find people in the community that are going to support you to do it. And yeah, I think it's a really awesome way of demedicalizing things.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. And we actually even use the park run to put out messages from the practice, you know, like the briefing at the beginning. Like if we want people to come in for the flu jabs, it's like, come on, guys, like, you know, after the 5K, we've got an open flu session, just run straight in. We don't mind if you're sweaty. So yeah, have a look. We have a dedicated page for the Park Run Practice Initiative on the college website. Highly recommend. We'll pop the link in here, hopefully, if Camilla can. Highly recommend going there and becoming one of over 2,000 practices to have joined it. So we're coming to a close here in the last few minutes. And this is where I just want to go and ask if anyone has any specific questions around that Run Talk Run sessions that myself and Callum deliver in terms of the practicalities. Hopefully we've explained it enough. So I'll leave it there. But if there are any questions that come in, Callum will throw at me. I just want to touch on the other side of the slide, which is the mental health swims. And I want you to think of this as exactly the same as what we talked about with Run Talk Run, except it's swimming. Now, Mental Health Swims is a charity based around providing swimming, both outdoors and indoors, to support people's mental health. Now, in Leamington, where I'm based, we launched the first primary care-based mental health swim. And we did this in our local leisure centre in Newbold Common, run by Everyone Active. And it works really simply. So for the first 12 weeks, the patients have access to the pool at specific times. It's Monday in the evening at 8 till 9 and Friday in the afternoon at 1 till 2 every week for free for 12 weeks. And then after 12 weeks, they get a reduced social prescriber membership for another 12 weeks, which is equivalent of paying £2 per week. And then after that, they go on to sort of the full membership. And actually, it was a trial that was supposed to go on for 3 months, and we've now continued it, and it's becoming a rolling thing because Everyone Active was winning because in those time slots, it was very quiet in the pool, and they had an empty pool that they were having to heat, costly, lots of money. And we got the benefit because we were able to support people with long-term conditions to use the pool space to start to feel more comfortable, because many of them didn't want to come on the walks or the run. And what they said about the walk is that they felt really self-conscious about holding everyone up. And though people were being so nice about it, they felt it was really challenging being right at the back of the group. But in the pool setting, no one knows how many lengths you've done. Let's be honest, I can't even remember how many lengths I've done after about 3 minutes. So it removes that kind of, assessing of, who's holding anyone up, or, how long is it taking. And in fact, 2/3 of the patients that come to our swim sessions can't swim. Instead, what we have is we have these exercises that Swim England provided in a poster, which they then do. And so they walk around the pool, they may do some like tricep movements on the side of the pool, etc. And they really enjoy it. And in fact, it's more popular than our walks and runs, which was interesting to see. And they are actually currently actively looking for more primary care networks to support, to deliver exactly the same thing. They provide the training, and they will link you up and have the conversations with your local leisure centre and pool. So if that is something that you think sounds up your street, then if you Google mental health swims, swim together, you will get the form which you can complete to express your interest. Callum, what do you think of that?
Yeah, great. And I think, look, Rachel Ash, who recently got an MBE, she set it up. She leads it. She's desperate for a devolved approach. So if you're Scottish, Welsh, Northern Irish, you've got a head start here, because they really want to make sure it reaches those all four nations.
Yes, she's really desperate. She's based in Wales, in fact, in Swansea, and she used to live in Edinburgh. So yeah, she actually even specifically told me when I met her on Monday recently, like she's desperate to look for somewhere in those areas. So if you are
Yeah.
listening to that and you want to support, please. I honestly, I wouldn't, I couldn't like promote it enough, because although what we do is we have one staff member go to those swims alongside the patients, and it's a win-win, because although yes, that's an hour of a staff member's time, but we rotor it, so it goes through a whole list of different staff members. They get the well-being benefit of being able to do a bit of a swim, but it is still work because there will have other patients that they're supporting, making feel comfortable, answering questions, etc. So it's about how you perceive these things. It's not a lost hour. We think of it actually as an hour potentially gained. That yes, we've lost maybe a few patient appointments that was going to be in that hour, maybe 3 or 4, but we replace that with a really high quality group peer interaction, utilize benefit their health. Right, active is something that you get you upset Scotland, because as unfortunately active partnerships are based in England, and really there are active partnerships being formed in Wales, which is great. And these active partnerships are charities that are funded by Sport England, and they provide to the local ecosystem to improve physical activity for the community. So our active partnership is Think Active. They were on our last webinar talking about funding, because what they can really do is support you both with connecting with local partners, as well as funding potential projects that you may want to undertake. However, I would say that for the majority, you don't need funding to make this happen, if I'm being honest. Chances is something that requires funding. Maybe as you go beyond and you want to develop further and more intensive projects, maybe something you want to consider. What about you, Callum? What are your thoughts when it comes to funding and the partnerships?
Uh, I think funding you're much better at than I've been. I think, yeah, look, I think perpetual challenge with me is finding there. We actually and I wouldn't necessarily advocate this to anyone, but we set up a charity in our local town to promote health and well-being, and we're using that to get charitable funding, and we have managed to get quite a lot to do quite a few different things. But it's we've applied to our local NHS endowment fund. That was quite a fruitful avenue, but it's quite a full on, it's quite an intense way of going about things. We've actually got employees now, so I just sit on the trustees, and it's all kind of it all happens. I can take very little credit, but that was what we've done. But I accept that's quite a full on approach.
Yeah, there's a challenge, absolutely. Now, thank you so much for listening. Please, for the next couple of minutes, if you have any questions, pop them in the Q&A. Are there any sitting there for us, Callum, that we can address straight away?
There is nothing at the moment. No,
Okay,
no.
fantastic. Brilliant. I think my key message is keep it simple. I use the word lean. Like I said, like any of these projects, you need to understand that you're probably wanting to keep them going. You don't want it to be just a flash in the pan that you do once or twice. So whatever you do, you want it to be as light and as lean as possible to make it sustainable, so that you can keep doing it month after month. Bring other team members, bring other patients where you can to get involved and support it. There are plenty of people passionate about it. So ask your PPG to put out a message in their newsletter or pop it. I remember the first actual sort of person that I got in the team that to bring our active practice to our practice was actually a patient, because I put out a Twitter message saying, you know, like, does anyone want to support me getting, you know, this practice, become an active practice? Literally within a few minutes, Mick, who I showed you in that picture, was like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. And so don't be afraid to ask for help, okay? Delegation is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength.
Good advice.
Brilliant. Any last advice before we close the webinar, Callum?
No, I think you've covered all the nuggets. Yeah, yeah. No, I think the big thing is, and maybe I mentioned at the start, is that I think from a lot of the research we've done on active practice and parkrun practices, is often led by an individual within a practice. It's very easy to get disheartened, and we are here to hopefully enthuse you and to make sure you're aware you're not alone. And there's at least 512 other yous banging the drum for physical activity. So yeah, that's what the newsletter is really about, is kind of sharing what's happening and letting you know that together we're stronger. I sound like a politician with a catchphrase like that, don't we?
Absolutely. And that segues us beautifully to, we want to hear your stories. Because like, as Casa mentioned at the beginning, there are some fantastic work being done. So please, on our website, we have an area where you can submit your story. You can scan this QR code if you like, and that allows you to let us know what you're doing, and we will shout from the rooftops about what that is. We will pop it in the newsletter. It will be there as a case study for others to learn from and other people to be inspired. So please have a look at that and let us know how about your story. And a final plug of the toolkit and resources, some of which we have shown you today. That's on the left-hand side for the QR code. And we have a few more upcoming masterclasses. These are each like today's, where we're going to go through a different topic in physical activity. Callum, do you remember what our next masterclass is next month?
Yeah, 18th of June, and it's on GPs with extended roles in lifestyle medicine. So we've got a good sign up already.
We have got, I'm not surprised by
yeah.
the rate of sign up. Now, if that's something that you're interested in, so to the extended role in lifestyle medicine, please let your colleagues know, let your fellow lifestyle enthusiasts know, come along, and we will go through in detail what that entails, what it looks like, and I look forward to joining you next month. But otherwise, Callum, we all good? No questions in the bank, and we can close. I can have a nap.
Thanks, guys. Go enjoy the sunshine. Yeah, it's beautiful out there.
Absolutely. Enjoy the sunshine. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate. Take care and all the best.
Thanks, everyone.